We had been married for 6 years when the housekeeper informed me that my wife's ex was back in town. He was not just anyone. He was Liam Bennett, the legendary actor with a trophy room full of Oscars. Even when I sat right there supervising her homework, my daughter would snap at me and call me the villain while praising Liam as the hero. She claimed he was the better man because he showered her with sweets and never made her study. It reached the point where she started screaming that she wanted him to be her real father instead of me. I did not hesitate to send the divorce papers to Ava that very moment. None of us could have predicted what would happen later on a hit reality show. A single offhand comment from my daughter left the entire production crew speechless and froze both Liam and me in our tracks. It was common knowledge that the only reason I managed to marry Ava was through my sheer, shameless persistence. She was a true blue blood from the prestigious Harrison family, possessing a breathtaking beauty and a temperament that was as cold as it was arrogant. Back then, I was just a nameless extra on a movie set, yet I somehow managed to win her heart and start a family with her. People used to joke that I was the patron saint of hopeless romantics for pulling off such a miracle. To be honest, I was the only one who truly knew how much that effort cost me. During our 6th year together, the housekeeper told me the news of her ex returning to the States. This man was a global superstar, the one and only Liam Bennett. In that moment, the classic trope of a woman finding a rebound to replace her first love felt all too real. I immediately went online to see if I shared any physical resemblance with Liam. It turned out I was completely wrong. We looked nothing alike and were total opposites in every way. If Liam was a brooding and sentimental spaniel, then I, James Carter, was a stray mutt that refused to be leashed. I lived my life like a dog ready to bite anyone who crossed me, but unfortunately, all that aggression meant nothing in the face of my current situation. Ava had stopped coming home the second Liam landed on U.S. soil. She ignored every single one of my calls and left my iMessages on read. Boiling with rage, I opened Instagram and began scrolling through Liam's latest posts. I soon found photos of them attending the same high-profile event in Malibu. While my wife was out socializing with another man, my daughter's behavior at home was making me lose my mind. Lily was only in 1st grade, and as I sat there trying to help her with her math, the tension was unbearable. She refused to pick up her pencil and started arguing with me like a teenager. Clinging to her stuffed animal, she looked me in the eye and declared that I was the worst person in the world and that Liam was a saint. She told me that Liam never made her do homework and was always surprising her with brand new toys. I didn't know whether to laugh or scream at the absurdity of it all. If Ava wanted to walk away, I decided I would let her go. My wife clearly wanted to audition a new father for our daughter, and Lily seemed more than happy to play along with the script. They say everyone has a moment of clarity in their life, and mine finally came at the age of 28. I had spent years working myself to the bone at Harrison Global, the massive corporation owned by Ava's family. What did I have to show for all that loyalty? Nothing but my father-in-law's constant disapproval and the endless contempt for my own wife and child. Being the subservient husband in a powerful family was a humiliating existence. I decided right then that I was done with all of it. The Harrison family was too small for my ambitions, and I was finished being their errand boy. It was time for me to step into the light and show the world what I was actually capable of. I drafted the divorce papers and hit send on the email before I could second-guess myself. I immediately called my longtime friend and agent, David Smith. He wasted no time finding me a comeback role, casting me as a cold-blooded antagonist in a major production. The catch was that I had to play a secondary villain in Liam Bennett's upcoming blockbuster. I was so furious that I nearly ended my friendship with David right there in his office. I grabbed him by the collar, feeling the urge to knock some sense into him. David started shouting for mercy, telling me to calm down and realize that after years of being away from the screen, I was lucky to even get an audition. I had to admit his logic was sound, because a comeback always starts with a bit of humble pie. I swallowed my pride and stopped complaining so I could focus on the work ahead. I joined the production, ready to play a mysterious villain opposite Liam's heroic lead character. Liam was known as the industry's golden boy and ultimate gentleman. My character, on the other hand, was defined by a ruthlessness that challenged his moral compass. During the press conference, Liam stood beside me with a polite smile that masked the poison in his words. He patted me on the shoulder and told the reporters that I was a natural fit for the role. He went as far as to suggest that my portrayal of a scheming coward was so convincing because it mirrored my actual personality. My character originally had a romantic subplot involving a love interest. Liam stepped in with a self-righteous tone and told everyone he had suggested removing it. He claimed the producers all agreed that no woman in her right mind could ever fall for a man as pathetic as the character I played. I brushed his hand off my shoulder and snatched the microphone before he could continue his little performance. I looked straight at the crowd and told them I hoped the writing team was taking notes. I quipped that since Liam's acting was so mediocre, he clearly felt the need to start rewriting the scripts to compensate. The moment the live stream ended, his fan base came for me with everything they had. The wave of online hate was massive, and I was trending on Twitter for all the wrong reasons. People were asking how a washed-up nobody had the nerve to criticize a Hollywood icon. The comments were filled with people mocking me for being the man who spent 6 years chasing Ava Harrison like a desperate puppy. They laughed at the fact that despite my marriage, her heart had supposedly always belonged to Liam. Another user posted that as soon as Liam set foot back in the country, I was discarded like trash. My friends all reached out to offer their sympathies, but I found myself feeling remarkably unbothered by the noise. I told them that this petty drama didn't matter because my only focus now was my career. In this industry, the only thing worse than being hated is being ignored. Liam was giving me free publicity, and I felt like I should be sending him a thank you note. I decided to capitalize on the attention by signing on for as many villain roles as I could find. David proved his worth by moving lightning fast, securing me over 20 different scripts in record time. I stayed home and threw myself into studying my lines while Liam stayed busy with his own agenda. He continued to manipulate the media while taking my daughter onto the most popular family reality show on television. Before they started filming, he had the audacity to send me an iMessage telling me to watch the live stream at 8. He told me to accept the reality that Ava belonged to him and that my refusal to let go was pathetic. I found it hilarious that he thought I was the one clinging to the marriage when I had already sent the divorce papers multiple times. Ava was the one refusing to sign them. I had called her office 3 times to follow up, but I was blocked by her assistant every single time. Her assistant kept giving me the same excuse about Ava being too busy to review legal documents. When I tried to explain this to Liam, he just laughed it off as a lie. He sounded incredibly confident, as if he had already won the war. He told me that Ava had never stopped loving him and was desperate to be free of me. He claimed that I was a parasite refusing to leave the Harrison estate and that he was already planning their wedding. He ended the conversation by telling me to watch his show so I could hear my daughter call him Dad on national television. Despite his insults, curiosity got the better of me, and I found myself opening the live stream at 8 sharp. Liam appeared on the screen looking like the picture of fatherly devotion, holding Lily's hand as if he were auditioning for the role of Dad of the Year. He gave her a huge smile and told her he had stocked the entire freezer with her favorite chocolate ice cream. He told her she could eat as much as she wanted, whenever she wanted. My blood started to boil the moment I heard that. Lily has a massive sweet tooth and a weakness for anything frozen, but she also has a very sensitive stomach. When I was living with her, I strictly limited her to 1 treat a day, which had caused many arguments between us. Lily looked up from her doll and asked if she could skip dinner entirely and just eat ice cream instead. Liam gave her a patronizing smile and told her that of course she could, because her happiness was all that mattered. Lily pouted and asked him if he was aware that doing that would make her sick. Liam's rehearsed smile faltered visibly on camera, and he seemed completely caught off guard by her logic. He tried to pivot by telling her she should be calling him Dad instead. Lily ignored him completely, focusing all her attention on fixing her doll's hair. Liam's expression soured, and forgetting the millions of people watching, He snapped and told her that once he married her mother, she wouldn't have a choice in the matter. Lily slowly set down her toy and looked him dead in the eyes. Just as he thought he had successfully intimidated her, she burst into a fit of hysterical sobbing. She screamed that he was a bad man and complained that she used to be the top student in her class before he started distracting her with toys. She wailed about how her grades were slipping because he never made her do her schoolwork, and now the boys at school were making fun of her. Watching from my phone, I felt a strange mix of pride and relief that she still cared about her education. Lily kept sobbing that if her mother married him, she would end up at the bottom of her class. She was a complete mess on screen, gasping for air while tears streamed down her face. Liam's face went from pale to beet red as the embarrassment set in. He forced a twisted smile that looked more like a grimace and hissed a quiet threat that her mother would punish her once they were off camera. He tried to save face with that weak comment before frantically signaling the camera crew to cut the feed. The live stream ended abruptly in a state of total chaos. By that evening, both Liam and I were trending across every social media platform. David was so energized he was practically vibrating, telling me that our small agency could never have afforded this kind of massive publicity. He joked that Liam was basically subsidizing my career and putting money straight into my bank account. I took a look at the comments on Twitter, and while it was hard to distinguish the bots from the fans, the majority of the feedback was directed at me in the form of insults. People were accusing me of brainwashing my daughter and turning her against Liam. Some users even suggested that she just needed a good scolding from Ava to set her straight. A few minutes later, I got a notification that Ava Harrison had officially joined Instagram. Liam's followers swarmed her new profile, flooding her first post with comments. The fans were convinced she had joined the platform to show her support for Liam. They were romanticizing their past as childhood sweethearts and blaming me for being the obstacle that kept them apart all these years. Moments later, Ava's first post went live, and it wasn't what anyone expected. She simply asked who this Liam person was and demanded an explanation from the network as to why her daughter was appearing on television with him. Ava's post sent the internet into a total frenzy. The comments section was a battlefield as people began to realize that Liam's claims about their relationship might have been exaggerated. Someone pointed out that Liam had been telling everyone Ava was ready to marry him, which now seemed like a complete lie. People were calling him out for staging a publicity stunt, noting that Ava had never publicly acknowledged him. However, some die-hard fans insisted it was just a lover's quarrel and that Ava was just venting her frustrations publicly. Then there were those who blamed me, claiming I was using psychological tactics to manipulate Ava. They accused me of being a stalker who refused to give her the divorce she supposedly wanted. The show's executive producer was a jolly man who was absolutely thrilled by the drama. The ratings were through the roof, marking the high point of his career, and he reportedly celebrated by ordering a massive steak dinner. He ordered Liam to keep the cameras rolling with Lily and then rushed over to my hotel to personally invite me onto the show. I gave him a skeptical look and asked if he was just looking for a televised brawl between me and Liam. He tried to deny it with a wave of his hand, but the excitement in his eyes told a completely different story. It was obvious he wanted nothing more than a front row seat to the explosion. I could read his intentions clear as day. I took a moment to consider the offer while sitting in the nice hotel the studio had provided for me. The film I was working on had a great reputation, and the production value was top tier. I had a major scene to film the next day that could make or break my comeback. However, the ache of missing my daughter was becoming unbearable, despite how difficult she had been lately. She was still my little girl, and I needed to see her. I decided to give Lily a call to test the waters. She surprised me by telling me not to come, her voice sounding colder and more resolute than I had ever heard it. She told me that since I was divorced from her mother, she was staying with her now. I could hear Liam laughing in the background, likely as they watched cartoons together. I couldn't help but slip back into dad mode, asking if she had finished her schoolwork before turning on the television. Lily snapped back that Liam was going to do her homework for her, that she didn't need my input. She told me she didn't miss me and threatened to refuse to see me if I showed up. Before I could respond, she hung up the phone, leaving me with nothing but the dial tone. I stared at my phone in shock as I set it down. The producer realized he wasn't going to get a yes out of me that day and prepared to leave. He handed me his card on the way out and told me the invitation was always open. I sat there staring at the card for a long while before finally letting out a sigh. There was no point in chasing after someone who clearly didn't want me around. I had hoped she would miss me, but Liam had clearly found a new way to keep her entertained and distracted. It occurred to me that Lily's unpredictable moods and her tendency to drive people crazy were traits she definitely inherited from Ava. Just as I was getting lost in thought, David burst into the room with a bag of burgers and fries. He set the food down while I went back to my script, obsessively rehearsing my lines until I felt ready for the next day. I arrived at the studio early the next morning and could immediately feel the electric atmosphere caused by the recent scandal. Normally, a supporting actor wouldn't get much attention from the press. But thanks to the drama from the previous night, the entrance was swarming with photographers. When security blocked their entry, they actually rented a construction crane to get a better vantage point. They hoisted high-tech cameras into the air, desperate to catch any sign of a breakdown on my face. They were clearly hoping to photograph me looking like a broken, middle-aged man who had just been abandoned by his wife. I refused to give them the satisfaction of seeing me crumble. If they were going to watch, I decided to give them a masterclass in professional acting. My performance was flawless. My lines were delivered with perfect intensity, and my choreography in the fight scenes was surgical. The chemistry during the verbal confrontation was so intense it felt like the room was going to catch fire. We finished in a single take, and the director led a standing ovation from the crew. Since the paparazzi couldn't get their mental breakdown shot, they had to settle for whatever they could get. They ended up posting the raw, behind-the-scenes footage online. The trolls who had tuned in to mock me were silenced as they realized the footage looked good enough to be the actual theatrical trailer. Comments started appearing, saying the paparazzi were accidentally doing the film's PR for them by capturing such high-quality work. Others admitted that my combat scenes looked incredibly authentic and that I clearly had real talent. A few people pointed out how rare it was to see an actor doing his own stunts these days. David was laughing his head off as he read the comments. I knew exactly why he found it so funny. Liam had recently been criticized for his over-reliance on stunt doubles, and the internet was quick to make the comparison. While the state of my marriage was still a mess, I was definitely winning the professional battle at that moment. Once I wrapped for the day, I checked the live stream of Liam and Lily again. I figured they might have bonded a bit by now, but within 3 minutes, I realized I had severely underestimated my daughter. The show's producers asked the contestants to perform a talent together. Liam, sticking to his carefully crafted image of the perfect father, decided they should perform a short skit. He cast himself as the heroic knight and put Lily in a princess gown, intending to rescue her from a dragon. It was a classic, cheesy Liam Bennett move designed to appeal to people who fantasized about being swept off their feet. Liam took the stage in a full suit of armor, though he conveniently left the helmet off so everyone could see his famous face. I could practically see the hashtags he had planned out, all revolving around the theme of a hero saving his princess. Lily looked miserable in her pink dress and showed zero interest in the performance. She mumbled her lines and acted completely bored while being kidnapped by the dragon, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else when Liam finally arrived to save her. At the climax of the scene, she suddenly put up a hand to stop Liam's advance. She turned toward the actor in the dragon costume and suggested they make a deal. She told the dragon that if he took her stepfather away and made sure he never returned, she would happily call the dragon her new dad. Even through the screen, I could see the sheer panic in Liam's eyes. Lily had just gone completely off script and blindsided everyone. The man in the dragon's suit stood there awkwardly, glancing toward the director for some kind of guidance on how to proceed. The producer, sensing a viral moment in the making, frantically signaled for them to keep the cameras rolling. He knew this was pure gold and didn't want to lose the momentum. The actor playing the dragon asked her in a gravelly voice if she didn't want to be saved by the night. Lily shook her head and said she would rather stay with the dragon and take care of him since he was lonely and old. She made him promise not to hurt the innocent people of her kingdom as part of the agreement. That night, a prominent cultural critic wrote a lengthy piece praising the segment. The critic argued that the 6-year-old had demonstrated incredible empathy and self-sacrifice. He called her a true princess who was willing to give up her own happiness for the sake of her people. He pointed out that while everyone else saw a monster, Lily saw a lonely creature in need of a friend. Meanwhile, Liam was fuming in the corner of the stage, his perfect image completely shattered. His planned hashtag about the heroic night never took off. Instead, the internet began mocking him with a new nickname, the coward who got rejected by a child. It was a devastating blow for someone so obsessed with his public image. Lily remained blissfully unaware of the online storm she had caused, and when a reporter asked her about it, she simply let out a long breath of relief. She said she was just glad the rehearsals were over so she could get back to her studies. She mentioned that she had made a promise to her friends Tom and Max to improve her grades. The producer gently asked if that promise was only for her friends. He suggested there was someone else who cared deeply about her success and revealed that they had invited a surprise guest. Lily's eyes instantly welled up with tears. As she turned toward the entrance, the door opened and I walked into the studio. I had finally decided to take the producer up on his offer. Lily let out a sob and launched herself at me like a rocket. I caught her and pulled her into a tight hug. The crew was poised to capture the emotional reunion, expecting a real tearjerker. There wasn't a dry eye in the room as they waited for my first words. I looked at my daughter and simply asked her who exactly Tom and Max were. Lily looked confused and whispered that they were just her best friends. I put on a stern face and told her she couldn't have two best friends. I joked that she had to pick a side and choose between Tom and Max. The viewers were glued to their screens, expecting a massive confrontation between me, Liam, and Ava. But Ava had gone silent since her last post, and I had been far too busy with work to engage in the drama, leaving the audience wanting more. My comment about choosing between two friends immediately went viral. People started speculating that I was making a subtle dig at Ava's past. They reminded everyone that Ava, Liam, and I were all in the same social circles in college, and that both Liam and I had been competing for her attention. Users were asking if I was calling out Ava for her history of being stuck in love triangles. Some people even started labeling her as manipulative for having both of us on the hook at the same time. Defenders argued that since we were supposedly divorced, Ava was free to marry Liam. However, others pointed out that Ava's recent post made it seem like she didn't even know who Liam was, which completely contradicted the narrative. The online debate grew more heated by the second, until a bombshell headline took over the internet. Old photos of Ava and Liam together from nearly a decade ago were suddenly leaked online. In the pictures, Liam looked like a normal guy with a buzz cut before he became a household name. Ava was wearing a simple white sundress and looked naturally radiant, her smile brighter than I had seen in years. She was leaning affectionately against him, and they looked like the ultimate high school sweethearts. The leak immediately silenced everyone who had doubted their past relationship. Ava's earlier post, denying knowing Liam, now looked like a desperate lie. Liam's fanbase declared total victory and began gloating across every social media channel. People were saying it was clearly just a petty argument and that Ava needed to control her temper. Right on cue, Liam's private alt-Twitter account was miraculously discovered by the public. The account featured several diary-like entries where he expressed his heartbreak. One post described him standing alone in the rain on the day of her wedding, claiming his world had fallen apart. He wrote about how it was his fault for not discovering the truth sooner. He accused me of being a parasite who never left her side on graduation day and made the horrific claim that I had drugged her drink after our first dance. He claimed that was the only reason she had gotten pregnant and been forced into a marriage with me. He said he didn't hold a grudge against me, but hated fate for separating two soulmates. My knuckles turned white as I gripped my phone in fury. David came up behind me and put a sympathetic hand on my shoulder, telling me that any attempt to defend myself right now would only make things worse. I tossed the phone onto the nightstand and told him I just needed some sleep. That night, my mind drifted back to the graduation party Liam had described in his post. I remember the grand ballroom and the way Ava looked as we danced. Her dress flowed around her, and her eyes were more radiant than the chandeliers above us. I was so captivated by her that I wished the music would never stop. I had been in love with Ava since our first day of freshman year. She was the center of the universe, a cold beauty who was the undisputed queen of the campus and the heiress to a massive fortune. Whenever she performed, the crowd would go wild. I had done plenty of embarrassing things just to get her to look my way, including spending all day in a sweltering mascot costume just to hand her a flyer. I even manipulated my way into her study groups for every elective class. I remember one summer when I finally worked up the courage to say hello to her while in that costume, only to pass out from heat stroke right at her feet. Ava was the one who personally dragged me to the infirmary that day. Eventually, we were paired up for a major project, and I promised myself I would win her over with my intelligence and dedication. I spent 3 days without sleep preparing for our presentation, but when the moment came, my brain completely shut down. Ava stepped in without a word, seamlessly taking over and making sense of the mess I had made. I felt certain back then that she felt something for me. When I finally asked her to the graduation formal, she actually said yes. I saw a fleeting, gentle smile break through her usual icy exterior. Her simple okay was the highlight of my life. For the record, Liam's accusations about drugging her were complete lies, though I will admit we both had a bit more than just one glass of champagne that night. I remember driving her home after the party ended. She rested her head on my shoulder, and I could smell her sweet perfume mixed with the warmth of the alcohol. I told myself that sometimes you just have to take a leap of faith. I unbuckled my seatbelt, pulled her close, and leaned in to kiss her. The driver was so shocked he slammed on the brakes, causing the car to jerk forward. Instead of pulling away, Ava wrapped her arms around me and held me even tighter. I can still recall the scent of roses and the warmth of her skin from that night. It was intoxicating. While Liam's story was a fabrication, there was a grain of truth to the uncertainty of our past. I often wondered if she would have ever married me if it weren't for the unexpected pregnancy. Communication between us started to fade almost immediately after the wedding. My father-in-law made no secret of his disdain for me, believing that acting was a loser's profession and forcing me into a corporate role at his firm. He gave me the most grueling work possible, leaving me exhausted every single day. Even with my hard work, he never showed me an ounce of respect and took every opportunity to humiliate me in front of his colleagues. Ava spent most of her time traveling for business, managing overseas branches and preparing to take the reins of the family empire. We were like strangers living parallel lives, barely seeing each other for weeks at a time. After 6 years of being married, I felt like I barely knew her at all. Yet, in spite of everything, there were moments when I allowed myself to believe she might actually care for me. I remember one time when I was severely ill, she flew halfway across the country just to be by my side. But when I woke up the next morning with my fever gone, she had already vanished, leaving the room cold and empty. Lily was about 4 then, and when I asked her if her mother had come home, she denied it immediately. I asked her if Ava had told her to lie to me, and her brief hesitation told me everything I needed to know. I knew she had been there. It hadn't been a dream. I just couldn't fathom why she felt the need to hide her affection and pretend she didn't care. The internet was still tearing me apart, but I knew that in today's world, any attention was a form of currency. I was barely awake when David burst into my room, his face lit up with excitement. He grabbed me by the shoulders and started shaking me, yelling that a world-renowned director had reached out. He said they wanted me to audition for a role that was basically a reflection of my own life. The director's email was very direct, stating that my controversial reputation and dramatic personal history made me the perfect candidate for the role. He asked me to read the script and give him my honest feedback. As soon as I finished the script, I understood why he wanted me for the part. The story followed an actor who faced endless rejection, but eventually fought his way to the top of the industry. On the surface, the character was a success, but he was haunted by scandals and a profound sense of isolation. It felt like I was reading a biography of my own life over the past few months. I knew that if I gave this performance my all, I had a real chance to create something legendary. I didn't waste a second in replying to confirm my interest in the project. Of course, things weren't going to be that simple. On the first day of pre-production, I walked into the conference room to find the director looking furious, staring at a massive pile of scripts on the table. He told me the studio had demanded a new character be added to the story at the last minute. What was once a character study was being turned into a buddy movie. My character was the gritty underdog fighting for a chance, while the new character was written as a wealthy, sophisticated aristocrat. A sense of dread washed over me the moment I heard the character description. My fears were confirmed when a luxury SUV pulled up to the curb moments later. The door opened, and Liam Bennett stepped out, looking every bit the movie star. Liam had been born into wealth and only joined the industry to add more fame and fortune to his family's name. I had to admit that he and Ava were a perfect match on paper. A marriage between the Harrison and Bennett families would create an unstoppable dynasty. Liam was wearing a smug grin as he walked toward us. Ever since his secret account was discovered, the public had fully embraced his version of the story. I was now the villain who had tricked Ava, while Liam was the tragic hero who had lost his one true love. Our director clearly wasn't a fan of the casting change, but his hands were tied by the studio. The industry had been struggling lately, and even top directors were finding it hard to secure funding. He lit a cigarette and whispered to me that art always has to compromise when big money is involved. I felt for him, but Liam was just getting started. He had brought his own team of writers to the set and was already demanding major revisions to the story. My character's importance was diminishing by the hour, and soon the entire movie seemed to be nothing but a vanity project for Liam. The director finally snapped, shouting that the new script was a complete mess and made no sense. The producer, who was firmly in Liam's pocket, didn't back down. He told the director that he was replaceable and that if he wanted to stick to the original script, he would have to find his own funding. He stopped mid-sentence when a fleet of luxury cars pulled up outside, led by a sleek Maserati. The door opened to reveal Ava Harrison, looking stunning in a custom black designer dress. She maintained her usual aura of cold authority as she walked toward the producer. He recognized her immediately and began groveling, asking what had brought her to the set. Ava's voice was like ice as she told him she had come to see the production everyone was talking about. It was getting dark outside, and the gloomy light seemed to match her irritable mood. She took off her glasses and walked past him without another word. The producer scrambled to keep up, leading her into the studio where the dramatic lighting made her features look even more striking. Her beauty was so perfect, it almost didn't look real. Several people in the room caught their breath as she passed by, fully aware that she had the kind of face that belonged on a movie screen. Her natural elegance was something no amount of acting lessons could replicate. I had to pinch myself to stay focused and reminded myself that she was nothing but trouble. I kept telling myself she was gone, but my resolve weakened the moment she started walking toward me. She stopped right by my side and announced to the producer that she was officially joining the film as an investor. The director, who hadn't met Ava before, was trying to gauge her intentions. He politely asked if she had any specific demands or creative input for the project now that she was on board. Ava told him she had no interest in the artistic side of things. She took a seat on the sofa, had a sip of her tea, and told them to continue their discussion with me while she handled the financing. The director and I got back to work while Ava watched silently from the back. The director suggested that rebuilding a specific set from my past would add a layer of authenticity to the character that we were currently missing. He admitted the cost was prohibitive for a scene that might only last a few seconds on screen. Ava spoke up for the first time that night and simply told him to build it. The director didn't hesitate to leave and start coordinating with the art department. Suddenly, I realized Ava and I were the only ones left in the room. I looked over and saw that she had drifted off to sleep on the couch. Even in sleep, she looked perfectly composed, though the slight frown on her face suggested she was under immense pressure. I realized that since I had left the firm, she had been carrying the weight of the entire business on her own. I walked over quietly intending to cover her with my jacket before leaving. Just as I reached her, the door slammed open and Liam burst into the room like a hurricane. Ava woke up with a start, her eyes looking soft and vulnerable for a fleeting second when she saw me. That warmth vanished instantly the moment she noticed Liam standing there. Her voice was ice cold as she told him she was surprised he had the nerve to show his face. She said it was actually for the best, because it was time they settled their business once and for all. Ava silenced him with a sharp gesture and a roll of her eyes, telling him that hearing him use that name was disgusting. She asked him quite bluntly if they were even supposed to be friends. She told him that if he hadn't been making such a spectacle of himself lately, she wouldn't have even remembered they went to school together. She explained that her family's silence over the years hadn't been out of respect for him, but rather to maintain a professional relationship with the Bennett family. She made it clear that he had overstepped his bounds. Liam started stammering, pleading that everything he had done was out of his intense love for her. Ava told him to get out, but he refused to move and turned his anger toward me. He accused me of threatening her and told Ava she didn't need to be afraid because he was there to save her. I was completely stunned by his delusion. When he suddenly lunged at me, I reacted on instinct and kicked his knee, sending him crashing to the floor in pain. He grabbed a teacup from the table and threw it at my head. In a flash, Ava grabbed my arm and pulled me behind her for protection. The cup shattered against the wall, sending porcelain shards flying in every direction. Ava didn't let go of my arm as she glared at Liam with pure hatred. Security arrived a moment later and subdued him. She told them to get him out of her sight immediately. The guards hesitated for a moment because of his celebrity status, but Ava ordered them to throw him out, reminding them that it was her private space. They eventually dragged him out of the room while he shouted in protest. Once we were alone, her grip on my arm remained firm, and the scent of her perfume made my heart skip a beat. I had to force myself to pull away and reminded her that we were no longer a couple. She calmly pointed out that she had never actually signed the divorce papers. I was caught off guard and told her that if she didn't sign them voluntarily, I would take the matter to court. She looked at me intently and asked if I was truly sure about wanting a divorce. I told her that I'd spent the last few months reflecting and realized I couldn't live a life without dignity any longer. I told her about my dreams of making a name for myself in the industry. She stayed quiet for a moment, and for a split second, I thought I saw a small smile on her face. She finally agreed that we should go through with the divorce. The following day, Ava's latest Instagram post sent shockwaves through the media once again. It was the same photo of her and Liam from before, but this time it was the uncropped original version. The full image revealed it was just a group shot with about a dozen other students after a lecture. She didn't need to write a caption. The truth was obvious to everyone. It was clear that Liam had cropped the photo to make it look like they were alone and in love. The press cornered Ava, demanding to know why she had waited so long to set the record straight. They speculated if her silence was due to the complex business ties between their two families. Ava refused to comment, but I had a pretty good idea of what was really going on. I cornered David and demanded to know what he had been up to lately. I reminded him that I had overheard him on the phone telling someone to wait for the right moment to make a move. He tried to act confused, but I wasn't buying it. I grabbed him by the shoulder and asked him straight out if he had been in contact with Ava. I accused him of telling her to hold off on the truth so the scandal would keep me in the headlines. We both knew the rumors were baseless, and a well-timed reveal would only help my career in the long run. The drama was keeping my name relevant and had already secured me a major film role. I demanded to know exactly what kind of game he and Ava were playing behind my back. He finally cracked under the pressure and admitted there was no malicious plot. He explained that Ava had simply asked him to do whatever he could to help my career and told him that she would always be available if I needed anything. I let him go and took a deep breath, trying to process everything. I remember my days as a communications major when I was still secretly harboring dreams of becoming a movie star. My first play in college had been a massive success, and I remember acting like a total diva backstage. I had joked about people needing to get my autograph then before I became too famous to talk to them. Ava had been in the audience that night. I had managed to land a few small parts after graduation, but my father-in-law had quickly put an end to that. He forced me into the family business, where I spent my days drowned in corporate meetings and forced social events. I had become a corporate drone, living a repetitive life between the office and my home. I hadn't even realized that I had completely abandoned my dreams until this moment. It shocked me to think that Ava might have actually remembered them all along. The production was grueling, but the atmosphere on set was incredible. Liam's presence in the film was reduced to a minor cameo, and the script was restored to its original, gritty vision. I was finally back where I belonged, leading a major motion picture. Our final scene was a play within the movie, and as soon as we finished, the crew cheered for my rap. The director personally handed me a bouquet of flowers and insisted on taking a photo together to commemorate the moment. Lily came running across the set and jumped into my arms. She was on her summer break and had been spending time on set, even landing a small walk-on role as a flower girl. The studio was packed with members of the press. The reporters recognized her immediately from our viral reality show moment. One of them jokingly held out a microphone and asked if she had finally decided between Tom and Max. Lily looked him dead in the eye and told him she had chosen her education instead. The room erupted in laughter at her serious tone. Once the press conference ended, Lily was whisked away by her nanny to attend her afternoon tutoring sessions. A few reporters managed to get a brief interview with Ava as well. In a rare moment of openness, she actually commented on her personal life. After a long pause, she confirmed that she was officially single and divorced. The press immediately jumped on the news, asking her if she was ready for the flood of new suitors that would surely follow. Ava looked a bit flustered and reminded them that she was a divorced mother with a child to raise. She shocked everyone by saying she was actually waiting for her ex-husband to give her another chance. The reporters asked if she was hoping for a reconciliation, and she simply nodded, saying she was waiting for the right moment. When they pushed her to define what that meant, she gave a soft smile and said it would happen once he became the star he was meant to be. She admitted it was her own hope and that the final decision would always be up to me. I returned to the house to pack for my next production. Lily was out at her classes, and the house was eerily silent. Ava sat on the sofa, her eyes following me as I moved around the room, gathering my things. There wasn't much left for me to take anyway. I finally stopped the charade of packing and admitted that I had really just come back to see her face one last time. A faint blush crept up Ava's neck as she stood up and walked toward me. She took my hand in hers and guided my fingers across her face, tracing her features with a slow, deliberate touch. Before I could think clearly, she pulled me closer and whispered into my ear. She told me that if she thought our family life would hinder my career, she would be content just being my lover for a while. I fell asleep in her arms that night and dreamed of us as an old couple. In the dream, I was at the end of my life, and she was holding my hand, asking me if I had any regrets about the way we had lived. I woke up to find her already watching me in the dark. Her expression was softer than I had ever seen it. She quietly asked me if I had been dreaming. She pressed her body against mine as I considered telling her about the dream. It felt like I had seen a vision of another life where all the pieces finally fit together. I decided to keep the dream to myself and simply pulled her closer. In the silence of the room, I whispered a heartfelt thank you into her ear. In another life, Ava and James had been truly happy together. Ava had been born into immense wealth and grew up with a natural sense of distance from the world around her. Everything changed the day she met James Carter. During her freshman year, she saw him perform in a campus play, where he played a charismatic gang leader with an undeniable presence. He had ended the performance by jokingly telling the audience to get his autograph before he became a superstar. It was a bold, arrogant statement, but it was full of a life and energy that she found intoxicating. From that moment on, she couldn't get him out of her head. James was a simple name, but he seemed to appear everywhere she went. On the day her mother passed away, she was walking across campus feeling completely numb and alone. Suddenly, a student in a massive bear costume rushed up and gave her a giant hug. He had barely managed to say a word before passing out from the heat right there in the costume. There were so many moments like that over the years. On the night of their graduation formal, James finally asked her to be his date. She had never been happier than she was in that moment. They had both been drinking, but their connection that night was based on far more than just alcohol and impulse. They eventually married and started a family while Ava took over the Harrison empire. James spent his life supporting her and building her legacy, even as his own dreams began to fade with time. The ambitious young man she had fallen in love with eventually became a frail old man. As is often the case, James passed away before she did. As he lay dying, she asked him if he had any regrets about his life. He smiled and said no, but she could see the truth in his eyes. An old film was playing in the background featuring Liam Bennett. She saw the way James looked at the screen and recognized the longing for the life he had given up. She remembered his boastful declaration of stardom from their college days. In the end, he had chosen her over his own dreams and settled for a quiet life by her side. He had buried his ambitions for the sake of their family and never looked back. Shortly after his death, Ava was diagnosed with a terminal illness herself. When she finally closed her eyes for the last time, she woke up to find herself back on their wedding day. She was dressed in her white gown, walking down the aisle toward a young and healthy James. She looked at his smiling face and promised herself that if she had a second chance, she would make sure he achieved his dreams this time. In this new life, she volunteered to manage their distant branches herself. She remembered how she had tried to encourage his acting in the past, only for a business disaster to drag him back into the corporate world. That event had forced him to give up his career before it even began. This time, she was determined to handle the business problems on her own, so he would be free to pursue his own path. She exhausted herself trying to manage everything alone, but she hadn't anticipated that her absence would allow Liam to manipulate the situation. In her previous life, Liam had been a non-factor, but now he was using the opportunity to insert himself into her life. Despite the complications, they had eventually found their way back to each other. During an interview, an intrusive reporter asked her to choose between her first love and the man who had made the biggest impact on her life. She laughed at the question and told the reporter that there was no such thing as a first love for her. She made it clear that James had been her only choice from the very beginning. Lily eventually became a successful filmmaker, specializing in documentaries about the lives of the elite. It was a natural career path for her, considering her father was the legendary Academy Award winner James Carter. Her debut film was an experimental project titled 3 Lifetimes, which utilized old footage of her parents to tell a sprawling story of love and sacrifice. The film focused on 2 distinct narratives, one where James sacrificed his dreams for his family, and another where he finally achieved the stardom he had always wanted. After the premiere, people were desperate to know what happened in the 3rd lifetime, but Lily remained silent. Years later, both James and Ava passed away peacefully. They had lived long, full lives together in their beach house. Their housekeeper noted that James had passed away first, and Ava had followed him just a few hours later. During their memorial, Lily screened her film one last time. Tears streamed down her face, but she wore a small smile as she told the audience that her parents were likely living out their 3rd lifetime together now. The film's final frame was a close-up of a handwritten note Ava had once left for James. It said that she had seen him at his lowest points, but she had also seen the indestructible spark of ambition in his eyes that had never faded. She had written that he was like the wind, someone who was never meant to be tied down by anyone, not even her. The truest form of love in this world isn't about tethering someone to your side. It is about having the courage to let them go so they can chase their own dreams. In a past life, James abandoned his acting career for her. Yet as he lay dying, he would stare at the actors on the television screen with a hunger in his eyes that he could never quite hide. Some people spend a single lifetime teaching you the meaning of love, while others require 2 full lifetimes to show you. He eventually received a Lifetime Achievement Award, and Ava remained his most devoted spectator. Through the years of missed opportunities, bitter misunderstandings, silence, and even their divorce, she never stopped standing right behind him. The wind never slows down for anyone, but the person who truly understands its nature will spend their entire life chasing after it.